Hello and welcome to your next project. In this project we're going to be building a chat application that uses Node.js along with Socket.io and WebSockets. So basically we come to the page and we get a prompt for a username. Okay, we put a username in and submit. Then it takes us to the main chat interface, which is very simple. We didn't use Bootstrap or anything, it's just completely custom. And on the right side you can see the list of users, and then on the left side, the main area, we have the chat box. Okay, so if we put something here, let's say hello world, and submit, you can see it says that the text that I typed along with my username. Okay, and what's really cool is that we can actually connect through another socket just by opening another tab. Okay, so if we go in and let's say my name's Mike and submit, you can see that Brad's already in the chat room. So if I say hi Brad, submit, and go back to Brad's tab, you can see we have Mike's message. I say hello back, and Mike sees that. Okay, so using WebSockets is perfect for something like a chat application, something that needs to be loaded in real time. You notice we don't have to refresh the page or anything like that. Okay, so let's get started. Alright guys, welcome to your next project. In this project we're going to be creating a chat application. Okay, so this is going to be a little different than anything we've done in any of the previous projects, and that's because we're going to be using WebSockets. Okay, more specifically we're going to be using Socket.io, and WebSockets allows us to communicate the client and the server in a different way. Alright, so basically there's going to be an open connection between the client and server. Instead of just making request response, there's going to be an open connection, and that makes everything pretty much completely instant. Alright, so we can send messages to the server and it'll update all the other clients that are connected. Alright, if that makes sense. And we'll even be able to open a tab and write a message, open another tab, and be viewing the application as a different user, and then if one user replies or writes in a message, the other one will update automatically without even having to reload or anything like that. Alright, so WebSockets is a really nice technology to learn. It's actually really easy. It's basically just events. Okay, you call separate events on through the socket. So you want to go to socket.io, and that'll give you just some examples. If we go to, let's go to the docs, and this actually gives you a really nice example on how to use it with a Node HTTP server, as well as using Node with Express, which is what we'll be doing. This right here, Express framework. Alright, and if we take a look here, we have one server file and we have one client, okay, which is index.html. On our server, we're going to include Socket.io here, and we'll create one route that's going to be /, which is just the home view, and we're just going to send the index.html file. Okay, that's the only route we need. And then under that we can do our connection. We can open our socket connection here, and then we can emit events. Okay, so right here we're saying socket.emit news, and we're passing along hello world. Okay, well, we're sending along the string world inside of hello. Alright, and then over here on the client, we can actually say socket.on and news, and that's going to connect it with this. Alright, so in here we have a callback function, and we're able to access the data that's being sent, which in this case is the string world. Okay, so hopefully that makes a little bit of sense. It'll be a lot easier to understand when we actually do it. Alright, so first thing we're going to do here is let's go to, let's see, projects. Alright, and the file structure is going to be very, very simple. It's not going to be even near as many files and folders as we've been using. Alright, so let's create a new folder here, and we're going to call this application chat.io. Alright. The first thing that I want to create is our index.html. That's going to have our interface. Alright, so I want to create the interface first, and then we'll create our server. So let's create index.html. And let's open this with Sublime Text. Okay, so we're going to put in just some base HTML. And what we're going to do is let's put a title in here. We'll say chat.io. Alright, and in the body we're going to create a div, give it an ID of container. Now we're just going to have a very simple user interface. I'm not going to use Bootstrap or anything like that. We'll just have some custom CSS. Alright, so in the container we're going to have a few different areas. Alright, first one is going to be the names wrapper. And this is going to be where our username form goes. So let's create a div, div with the ID of names wrapper. Okay, and then inside there, let's put an H2. We'll say chat.io. And then we'll have a paragraph, and we're just going to say create username. Okay, under that we'll have our form. And this is just going to have an ID of username form. Alright, and inside here, let's put an input, and I'm going to give this a size of 35, and an ID of username. Alright, let's also specify type text. Okay, and then under that, we're going to have input type is going to be submit, and value submit. Okay, so that's the form and that's the names wrapper. So we want to go under that now and create the main wrapper. So div, I want to do ID. Okay, so in the main wrapper, let's do an H2. I don't know why it keeps moving my tag back. It's not keeping the indent. Okay, so this will also say chat.io. These two are never going to show at the same time, the username and the main wrapper. Once they enter the username, that'll disappear and the main wrapper will show. Okay, so let's see. We want div, give it an ID of chat wrapper. Okay, and then inside there, we're gonna, why is it doing that? We're gonna have an ID of chat window, and that's not gonna have anything inside of it because that's gonna be generated through our JavaScript. Alright, underneath that we'll have the actual message form. Okay, so let's give this an ID of message form. Notice none of these forms are actually going to be submitted to an action. We're just going to kind of grab them using their ID. Alright, now in here, let's just copy this. Okay, so we have a text input. Let's change this ID to message. And I'm also going to add a placeholder. Okay, submit. Okay, so that's the main wrapper. Now we want to stay in the main wrapper. Actually, we want to go under the chat wrapper. And this will have an ID of user wrapper. And this is where all the usernames will be. Okay, and just like with some of the other stuff, such as the chat window, we're not going to put anything in this div. It'll be generated through JavaScript. So we're going to give it an ID of users. Okay, so that should be it. If we save that and look at it, Okay, it's not going to look like much. Alright, so just two forms. What we're going to do now is just add some CSS, and I'm just going to put it inside of the head. Alright, so first of all, I want to give the body a light gray background. Alright, so let's say background, just like that. Okay, then we'll do container. Container is going to have a width of 700. And we're going to give it a margin of 0 auto. Okay, push everything to the middle. Now for the chat window, that's just going to have a fixed height of 300 pixels. Then we have the main wrapper, which kind of wraps around not everything, but the where we actually add messages and we see the chat. Basically everything except the username form. Alright, so to begin with, we want this to display none. Okay, so after that, let's put in our chat wrapper. And I'm just going to go ahead and paste this in. Okay, so we're floating it to the left. We're giving it a border with a rounded radius of 10 pixels. A background of light gray, and then padding 10 pixels. Alright, then we need our user wrapper. And let's paste that in. Okay, so this has all of the same style as the chat wrapper. In addition, went to margin left width of 150 and a max height of 200. Okay, then we need our names wrapper. And for that, we're actually going to have a lot of the same stuff as well. Okay, float left, border, padding, margin left. And then let's see, last thing, I just want to make the inputs a little higher, so height 30 pixels. Alright, so let's save that and reload. And now we have our username form. Alright, and just to show you, if we show the main wrapper and then let's see, what do we want to, I think the names wrapper we don't want to show. Okay, so that'll give us this where we can add chats here, and then the users will be over here on the side. Alright, I'm just going to put that back to hiding the main wrapper. Okay, so that's our interface. In the next video, we're going to make it so that we can send chat messages. Alright, we're not going to do the usernames yet, because we'll do that afterwards. I just want to be able to send messages. Alright, so I'll see you in the next video. Hey guys, we are back. In the last video, we created our user interface in index.html. That's the only file we created. Now what we want to do is we want to start to create our server, okay, our Node.js server. So the first thing I want to do is create a package.json file. Alright, we could manually create it, but I'm just going to open a command line into our project folder. Alright, and we're just going to run npm init. Okay, and of course you have to have Node.js installed. So the name, that's fine, chat.io, version, description, we'll say simple chat app. Entry point index.js. I'm going to change that to app. Actually, no, server.js makes more sense. Alright, and that's good. You can put your own name. Alright, so that should go ahead and create it. I'm actually going to add it to Sublime Text. Let's see, C drive, projects, chat.io. Alright, so here's our package.json file. Now what we want to do here is we just want to add a couple dependencies. So we're going to go right here and say dependencies. Okay, all we need is socket.io which will be the latest version, and also Express, also the latest version. So let's save that, and now we're going to go back to our command line, and let's do npm install. Okay, so that'll go ahead and install Express and socket.io. Okay, now that those are installed, we're going to create our server.js file. Alright, let's open that up. And first thing we'll do is include Express. And what we'll do is just put a comma here and continue on with the things we need to initialize. So app is going to equal Express. Alright, and then we also need server. That's going to be equal to require HTTP, and then we're going to say dot create server and pass in app. Alright, and then we also need to include socket.io. And we want to call .listen and put in server. Alright, so next thing we want to do is tell it to listen on whatever port we want to use. So for that, we'll say server .listen, and I'm going to pass in process.env.port, or let's just say port 3000, but you could put anything really. Alright, so we need one route, and that's it, okay, just for the index file. So let's say app.get. Okay, this will be to slash. Alright, and then this is going to take in request response, and then we're going to say response.send file. Okay, and then here we're going to say dir name, and let's concatenate onto that /index.html. Alright, so we're just saying when you go to the home screen or slash, we want to load this file. Simple as that. Alright, so let's actually test that out. So we'll save, and then what we're going to do is go into our command line, and we're going to say node server. Actually, you know what, let's put a comment just so we can, not a comment, but a console log, just so we can tell if we're actually running the server. Alright, so let's say console.log server running. Okay, so server running. Now let's go to localhost port 3000. Okay, so it loads this. Okay, that's exactly what we want. I just want to fix this. You see how we have kind of an indent here, like in the input? To fix that, let's go to our HTML and edit the CSS. Alright, so what we'll do is just say border solid 1 pixel gray, and reload, and that fixes that. Okay, so back to server.js. What we're going to want to do here is connect to our socket. Alright, so we're going to say io.sockets.on, and we want to say on connection, run a function, and in here we're going to pass socket, and then this is where we're going to do all of our events and stuff like that. Alright, so first of all, let's just console.log, we'll say Yeah, we'll just say socket connected. Okay. And like I said, we're going to make it so we can send a message. So to do that, we're going to say socket.on. And in here we could pretty much put whatever we'd like. I'm going to say send message. That's the name of the event. And then we'll have a function. Okay, pass in data. And then we have to say io.sockets, plural, emit. Alright, and we want to emit new message and pass along the data. So we'll say msg data. So now we want to go on to the client side. So we're going to go back to index.html, and we want to go down to the bottom here, right above the ending body tag. And we're going to include two things here, two scripts. So first one is Jquery. We're just going to use the CDN. And then the second one is going to be the socket io.js file. Alright, so that we can actually interact with the server. Okay, so we're going to be using Jquery. So let's open up a script tag. Oops. Alright, and first thing we're going to do is we're going to open up $ parentheses, and in here we're going to say function, and we'll create a variable called socket and set that to io.connect. Now just by doing that, this is going to actually call, it's going to connect using this connection, and then we should see this in the console. So let's give that a shot. We'll stop this and we'll say node server, and now you can see socket connected. Alright, so that's what we want. Now back to index.html. What we want to do is we want to catch, well, first of all, we want to show the form, and we don't want to show the user form yet because we don't have that functionality. So what I'll do is I'm going to remove the display none from the main wrapper, and I'm going to put that into the names wrapper. Alright, so let's reload, and now we have our chat window. Now this is where the users will go, just don't pay attention to that yet, just this part here. Alright, so when we submit this form, we need to catch it. We need to catch the input. So for that, we'll use Jquery. So I'm going to create a variable called, let's call this message form, whoops. And notice I'm putting a $ in front of it. We don't need to do that, but since it's a variable that is referencing Jquery, I'm going to use the $. Alright, we're going to set that to Jquery, and we want the ID of message form. Okay, we also want a variable called message, and we'll set that to the ID of message. And let's create a variable called $chat, and we're going to set that to the chat window. Alright, so we have those variables. Now down here we want to get the message form, and we want to say .submit. Okay, so we have a submit event, and then in here we're going to create a function. Okay, we're going to pass in an event, and then just to prevent the form from actually submitting, we're going to say prevent default. Alright, and then just to test things, we'll say console.log, and we'll say submitted. Okay, so we'll save that, and let's restart the server, and I'm also going to open the console in Chrome. Okay, so if we say something and submit, you can see down here we get submitted. Alright, so we know that that's connected and working. Now what we want to happen when we submit is we want to emit the send message event. So we'll say socket.emit, and we want send message. Now remember, on the server side we have that right here. Okay, so that's going to submit it, this is going to catch it, and then it's going to emit to the client new message along with the data. Okay, so let's go back to index, and in addition to this we want to send along whatever's passed in the form. So as a second parameter we're going to say message.val. Okay, so that'll send the message, and then we just want to clear the form, so we'll say message.val, and then just pass in empty quotes. Alright, so let's save that. Well, actually we still have to add the message to the chat window. Alright, so under that, under this whole thing, we're going to say socket.on. Alright, now this time, whoops, I don't want to do that. This time it's going to be new message. Alright, we sent the message to the server, and the server gets it, and then it's sending new message back along with the data. And then we can do what we want with that data. Okay, so this is going to get past data, and then what we'll do is say chat.append, and let's see, we want to append data.message. Alright, and then we just want a line break after that. Okay, so let's save that. Reload the server. Refresh the page, and let's say hello. Submit. Data is not defined. Oh, that shouldn't have a $sign. And there we go. Hello. Okay, so now we can send messages. So in the next video, we're going to want to implement username functionality so that we could log in, we'll see the names over here, and we'll also see a name next to each message so we know who sent it. Alright, so I will see you in the next video. Hey guys, in the last video we made it so that we could actually enter messages here. Okay, so we can add chat messages, but we need to implement username functionality so that we can distinguish what messages are from what user. So first thing we're going to do is in the HTML we have, let's see, where is it? In names wrapper we have display none. So we're going to actually cut that and put it back to where we originally had it in the main wrapper. Alright, that way when we go to the application we just see the username form. So we're going to go into server.js and down to where we have our connection event right here. And let's go right here and say socket.on, and we want to pass in new user. Okay, and then we want a function, and that function is going to take a data and callback. Okay, and we're going to check the username because we don't want to have double usernames. If there's already one taken, then the user is not going to be able to use that one. So let's say username dot, actually usernames, and that actually needs to be initialized. This is going to be an array that holds all the usernames. So up at the top here, I'm just going to simply initialize it with an empty array. Okay, just like that. Alright, and then down here we'll say we actually need to put this in an if statement. Okay, so if usernames dot index of, pass in data, and say not equal to -1, then callback false. Alright, so we're checking to see if the username is there. Then we'll do an else. Then we're going to set callback true. And we'll say socket.username is going to be equal to the data that gets passed in. And then we're going to add it to the usernames array. So usernames.push socket.username. Alright, and then we're going to call a function called update usernames, and we're going to create that. Alright, so let's go under here. We'll say update usernames. Alright, and all we want to do here is emit an event. So io.sockets.emit, and we want to emit usernames, and we also want to pass along the usernames. Okay, and this is just the array. Alright, and we're passing that so that we can actually list them on the sidebar in the app. Alright, so this is the server's looking good. The last thing I want to do here is write a disconnect event. Okay, so we'll say socket.on disconnect. Okay, and pass in data. And then we're going to say if not socket dot username, then we want to return. Alright, and then down here we're going to say usernames dot splice, because what we want to do is we want to take that user out of the usernames array. Alright, so we want to splice usernames dot index of socket dot username, and then we want to pass in a second parameter of 1, and then we're going to call again this update username. So let's grab that just like that. So let's save it and go back to index. So what we're going to do here is go down to the bottom. We're going to add a couple more variables. Alright, so let's say var username form, just like that. Alright, and then we're going to say var users, set that to Jquery users. Let's see, username is going to equal Jquery username. And we also want an error, okay, because we want to be able to show error. Okay, so down here, let's go. Actually, I'm gonna copy this and paste that in here, and then we'll change this to username form dot submit, and let's just do a simple test. Let's see. Unexpected token. Oh. This needs to be an equal sign. Alright, so let's submit, and down here we get submitted. So we know that we're catching that. So let's go back to index. And what we want to do is say socket.emit new user. And then we want a second parameter of the value of the username. And then finally we want a function, and that's going to take data. Alright, and then in here let's check for the data, and that's going to take an else as well. Okay, so if data, what we want to do is we want to hide the username form. We want to hide this, and we want to show the main wrapper. So we can do that with Jquery. So we'll say names wrapper dot hide, and we'll say main wrapper dot show. So let's test that so far. We'll save it, restart, reload, and if we put something in here, it hides the username form and shows us the main wrapper. Alright, so that's good. Now we'll say else. We'll take that error variable and say .html, and then whatever error we want to say, let's say username is taken. Alright, now we need to actually create a div with the ID of error in our HTML. So let's go up here, right above the username form, and we'll say div ID equals error. Okay, go back down. So we're submitting that new user. That's going to go to the server. It's going to go right here, and then if you look down here, we're going to call update usernames, which emits an event called usernames to the client. So we have to catch that on the client. So you can see all this is basically passing stuff back and forth from the server to the client. So we now need to say, this will be the last part, so socket.on. Alright, and we want usernames function Okay, so I'm going to initialize a variable called HTML, and we'll set it to just an empty string, and then we're going to want to loop through the usernames. So we're going to use a for loop, and we'll say I equals 0, and then as long as I is less than data.length, and then we need to increment by 1, so I++. Alright, so for every username that we scroll through, we're going to add to the HTML. We're going to append using plus equal, and then data, whatever iteration it's on, and then we'll just concatenate a line break. Alright, and then down outside of the for loop, we're going to say users.html and pass in that HTML variable. Okay, so that should do it. Let's go restart. Okay, and let's refresh this page. Username, submit, and now you can see that Brad is over in the side here. And if I say hello, oh, we didn't do that part yet. We have to make it so that the name shows there as well. So we need to go to right here, new message, and let's put in some strong tags. Okay. And then inside here, we're going to concatenate data.user. Alright, now I don't think we actually sent the user, so we need to save that and go back to the server and see where we sent the message. Well, we also want to send the user. Okay, so we'll say user. Oops, I don't want that. I want socket.username. Alright, so that should do it. Okay. And now if I say hello, we get Brad hello. Alright, I'm just actually going to just put a colon there and a space. Like that. Alright. Okay, so if I open another tab and we go to the same localhost port 3000, sign in as John, you can see that Brad is there. And if I go back to Brad's tab, John is there. So as John, if I say hi Brad, and we go back, you can see that I can see John's message. If I say hello John, he gets that as well. So that's exactly what we want. And if I close John's tab, you can see that on Brad's tab, John is now gone. So it's working perfectly. So that's how we can create a chat application. Now in the next video, I'm going to show you how we can actually deploy a Node.js application, because we haven't really gone over that yet. So I will see you in the next video. Alright, so now that our local application is complete, I want to do something that we haven't really done, and that is make our application live on the web. And there's a few different ways you can do it, a few different services. I want to use Heroku, which is an application hosting provider, among other things. And it's used commonly for Node.js as well as Ruby on Rails, Python, and a whole bunch of other programming languages. Now, there's a few different packages. We want the free package, which is mostly used for development, maybe some small production apps. But you can see if we go to pricing and go down, you can see that packages for enterprise level businesses can go up to 30 grand. So yeah, it can be very, very expensive, but that's if you have, you know, like a site like Instagram or Twitter or something like that, where there's just loads and loads of data. This is an excellent solution because it's really easy to scale. All right, so what you want to do is first sign up, and I already have an account, so I'm not going to go through that, but just, you know, fill in your information. And once you do that, we can log in, and you shouldn't see this. You should see your dashboard, and you can see that we have a bunch of different selections for different programming languages and platforms. Okay, so obviously we want the Node.js. So if we click this, it's going to take us to, I guess, like a little guide to get started. So we're going to go ahead and click I'm ready to start. And you can see it says that this tutorial assumes that you have an account as well as Node.js and NPM installed, which we do. Okay, so the first thing you want to do here is to download the Heroku Toolbelt for Windows. Alright, and you can choose, if you're using a different system, you can choose it. Okay, so we want Windows. And I actually already downloaded it earlier. So let's go ahead and run that. And it's just a Windows software installation, just go through it. I'm going to use the default directory, program files. It already exists. Okay, so I'm just going to overwrite it. And we're going to choose full installation. Okay, it'll also install the Ruby programming language as well. Alright, so we'll click finish, and now that should be installed. Now if we scroll down, we want to log in here with the command prompt. Now, I'm not going to use the git bash because I've had issues with that, so we're going to use just the standard Windows command prompt. Alright, and we want to go to the application directory. So mine is in projects/chat.io. Alright, and let's do Heroku login. And you just got to put in your email and also your password. Alright, so authentication successful. I think it creates the app. Oh no, we need to do app create. Okay, so let's click on this. I have installed Toolbelt, and let's see, prepare the app. Alright, so this here is if you want to do the sample project. We're not going to do that, but what we need to do is create a Git repository. So I'm going to go into, actually, no, I'm just going to do it here. We'll just say git init. Alright, and that'll create a .git folder in your project folder. And I think by default it's going to be hidden. So if you want to unhide folders in Windows, you'll see this .git. Alright, so next let's add everything to the Git repository. So we can say git add, and then a dot is gonna, it just means add everything that's in the folder. Alright, so now we should be able to commit locally. So we'll say git commit, and I'm going to add the M tag and then a comment. Okay, let's see. Commit didn't, oh, I put a, wait a minute. Commit did not match any files known to Git. Oh, is that because I use single quotes? Alright, there we go. Alright, so now it's committed locally. Now let's go to the next page to deploy the app. Alright, so we want to do Heroku create. And that should, you can see that it actually gave us a just a random name here. So it's stillcastle3340.herokuapp.com. Now if we go back to the panel here and reload, see that we have an app now. Alright, so there's not much we can look at yet, but let's go ahead and push it. Okay, so we want to do git push Heroku master. Alright, so that'll push to the remote repository. Alright, so that's complete. So to test your app, you can go to, click this button here. Actually, you can just say, you can actually have the command line open it. If we say Heroku open. And it's probably going to give us an error. Yep, okay, application error. So let's continue with this guide because there's some things we didn't do. Okay, so down here, the application is deployed. We need to ensure that at least one instance of the app is running. So let's go ahead and copy this command here and paste that in, or type it, whatever. Scaling dynos. Alright, so no such process type web defined in proc file. Alright, so what we need to do is, let's see, define a proc file. Basically, we need to create a file called proc file with no extension, and we just need to include the main file that we want them to open, which is app.js. Okay, this example says index. Okay, but I'll still copy that. And then we want to go to our project folder and create a new document and call it proc file. And it should have a capital P. All right, and then we'll open that up. And I'm going to paste that in and change this to app.js. I think, right? Yeah. All right, so we'll save that. Now we have to make the changes here. We'll just add everything. All right, and then we want to commit. So git commit m, and we'll say added proc file. All right, and now we should be able to say git push Heroku master. All right, so let's go ahead and see if that worked. All right, so we're still getting the error. Let's see, we can show our log with Heroku logs. All right, so let's see, error code H14, no web process is running. H81. All right, guys, so I was looking at the documentation and I went ahead a little bit, and what we need to do here is we need to define our scale, our dyno scale right here. So basically we need to just copy this and paste, and then what it should do is just scale your dynos at 1. And let's see, scaling dynos done, now running. So now we can go ahead and reload, and there's our app. All right, so this is now live on the internet. You can get to this from anywhere using this subdomain. Of course, you can add your own domain, but let's just make sure that this works. Okay, so username. All right, so something went wrong here. All right, the issue is that we have HTTPS. Okay, we need to get rid of that S, and then submit, and there we go. Okay, so that's working. Now we should be able to connect through another browser tab. We'll say Mike. Okay, you can see Brad and Mike. We'll say hi Brad. And we can see that, and then we'll say hi Mike. All right, cool, so it's working. Now to get your own domain, because obviously if this was the production app, you don't want this as your domain. You can do that from the panel here. Let me see, I think in settings. Yeah, okay, so domains, add your custom domain names here, then point your DNS to Heroku. Okay, so I guess, yeah, click edit, you could type in your domain, and then you just need to point your DNS, and you can just click on the link here. That'll take you to the page that explains all that. All right, so that's how you can get your Node.js app live on the web using Heroku.